Okay, so this is a recap slide. Now, the discussion about this is an important discussion, as I was just chatting with Dr. Mittal about. So, the discussion about digital economy itself, there is a lot of noise there. If you can put yourself on mute, it would be good. So, the discussion about digital economy itself is not a technical one. Let me make that very clear. But let's be clear that technology is one of the most critical enablers of the digital economy. So, are you with me? Because I'm hearing a lot of noise. Is it the right time to start? So may I request everybody to be on mute, but when you want to ask a question, which I would strongly encourage you to, kindly unmute yourself and ask anything that you would like to. But meanwhile, kindly keep yourself on mute. So as I was saying, this discussion about digital economy itself is not a technical discussion. First of all, I want you to be clear on that. But let's also be clear that technology is one of the most critical enablers of the digital economy. The events that led to the evolution of the digital economy are clearly technological, which is why I have put up this previous slide. So today, if you look at this slide, we are in the 5th generation of ICT. With each generation, some of you may remember I had mentioned it last time, with each generation, ICT has become more pervasive. And what does it mean by when we say more pervasive? It means that people have increasingly adopted it. So it is not only that technology has evolved, but its usage and adoption has also increased. So next we are seeing that it's not only people that are adopting it, but next things are also adapting to ICT, which will no doubt lead to the 6th generation of ICT, which is the IoT generation. But let's limit it ourselves to the 5th generation of IoT, which is what we are talking about. We talked about some of the technical milestones in the last class. We'll not go into that again, but please always remember that these are the technical milestones which enable the digital economy. In fact, in terms of impact, digital technology can only be compared to the advent of electricity in our lives. Also, of course, most of us were not around when electricity was first introduced, but we can all imagine. So it can be compared to the advent of electricity in our life. Both have unleashed, for example, unprecedented levels of innovation and changed the lives of people in unimaginable ways. So much innovation has happened since electricity came about. It's not just for lighting the bulb but so many new things have been made possible because of electricity. Similarly, it is true of the digital economy, as we shall see. Okay, so this was just a quick recap. I will not dwell more on this unless somebody has a question about how we evolved through 5 generations of ICT up to the present one. So we will move now to our discussion on the digital economy. But again, as I'm saying, kindly feel free to stop me for any questions. This is not a technical discussion, but technology is also important. But even some non-technical issues may also need to be clarified. So if you have a question or even a suggestion, feel free to stop me. The more interactive we make it, the more rich the whole session would be. So let's talk about the digital economy. So the digital economy is what we live in. So it has now become sort of completely interwoven with the traditional economy. I mean, when we say economy, we mean the digital economy. We don't say the analog economy or the digital economy. So that's what I mean when I say interwoven with the traditional economy. In fact, it is even hard to imagine that there could be any other type of economy. So today we'll be reiterating some very common and familiar concept because, as I said, we are all the digital economy is quite how shall we say ubiquitous in terms of our everyday experiences. We see it all around us. So basically we'll be reiterating some common and familiar concepts, putting things in perspective. As I said, it is the kind of objective today and not teaching new things. So, and unlike, say, some structured topics, for example, let's say mathematics, unlike, say, mathematics, where the formulas are fixed and unchanging, the core concepts of the digital economy are open to interpretation, they're open to imagination, and they're open to innovation. Okay, so in fact, this is what makes the digital economy so full of potential to do things differently or to create differentiation, as it is called in the corporate parlance. So I hope I'm not speaking too fast, but I'm just giving a sort of a prelude to what is the digital economy. So let us begin by defining what we mean by economy. Before we come to digital economy, let's talk about economy. Anybody here would like to share his or her view on what we mean by economy. What is economy? Anyone? Okay, anyhow, so this economy is a vast subject in itself. We'll not go into its depths. In fact, people spend 3 years studying economics before they graduate in economics. So we cannot, of course, talk about economy in a lot of depth because we will be deviating. However, let's at least have a clear idea on what we mean when we say economy first before we go to the digital economy. First of all, economy is not just about the flow or supply of money. That's what most of us imagine when somebody uses the word economy. We think in terms of supply of money. That it is actually more than that. If you want to define it, I would say that uh, it refers to the state of any country or a region. Let's call it a region because it could be country, it could be continent, it could be the whole planet. So let's call it a region as a generic term. So it refers to the state of a region in terms of two very important things, which is the production and consumption of goods and services that are used by the people who live in that region. Okay, so I will repeat that as we go along the flow so that all of us are clear. So for our purposes, we will define economy as of any region or any geography as a state, uh, as it's a state in terms of producing and consuming the goods and services for the people that live in that region. It's not just about, as I said, the flow of money. In fact, the term economy, some of you may be aware that the term economy originated as an expression to indicate scarcity. In fact, to be more precise, it is an expression to indicate how scarce resources are allocated within a group or population. The key word is scarce, as I said. In fact, we still use terms like economical to refer to scarcity or shortage and to encourage cost effectiveness or efficiency. Right. So economic is also referring to allocation of scarce resources. Let's say we have a loaf of bread and we have 3 people. You each can have, let's say, about 6 pieces of bread per person. But if there are 18 people, then each can have only one. So basically, it's about the allocation, how scarce the resources and how it is distributed among the population. So that's what we mean by economy, the production and consumption of goods. Remember that. Okay, so in the digital world, however, now here is the dichotomy. In the digital world, however, we do not always face a scarcity of resources, but the term economy has prevailed. So to re-emphasize, the economy, whether it is digital or analog, refers to the set of activities and programs dealing with allocation of resources, okay, that go into creation and consumption of whatever we use or whatever we consume. So creation and consumption of goods, services, that we'll go into a lot of examples. I hope there will be time to talk about examples, but right now I'm just giving you a prelude to the economy. That's why I'm not even coming to the first slide yet. So I hope we are clear about. Anybody has any question? Just one more very important thing about economy. I just remembered, which it is important to emphasize here. See, economy is always driven by something. I'm using the term analog economy for the pre-digital economy. It may or may not be the right term, but I hope it conveys that when I say analog economy, it means the older economy. When I say digital economy, it means the newer economy. So economy always has drivers.
So can you please differentiate between hello?
Yes,
So can you please differentiate between exactly what is analog economy and what is digital economy?
yes. See, so as I said, I'm only referring to the term here as analog because most of you, in fact, most of you who are studying engineering would be familiar with the terms analog and digital. Analog means something that is non-digital. Let's suffice it to say, and I'm not going into the signaling and how the analog signals go through a curve or a sine wave and digital signals are more discrete. But that is not my point here. My point is analog for the current discussion means something that existed before digital. I can, if you're not comfortable with the term analog, we can use old economy. Okay, so analog means old economy here in this context. I'm not so it is important to understand when we talk about old economy. I'm avoiding the word analog. When we talk about the old economy, the primary drivers, as we said, the economy refers to the allocation of resources for creating and consuming goods and services. What were these resources in the old economy? What was required to create goods and services in the old economy? Anyone? Okay, so the earlier these resources referred primarily to labor, tools, land, and raw material. Right? These are, I mean, if you wanted to set up a factory, these are the 4 things you would need. You would need labor, people to work in your factory, or you will need tools, whatever lathe machine or other production equipment. You would need land, and you would need raw material. These were this is what the
Sir,
economy was confined to.
sir.
Okay, so, hello.
Yeah.
Capital. So, okay. Whereas in the digital economy,
Hello.
what do they refer to in the digital economy? They refer
Ashish, there is a question by somebody.
Okay,
how about capital?
Come again? Sorry, the audio is not.
How about capital?
Capital.
You want to know what is capital?
Sir?
Yeah.
To start, we need capital to start anything, right?
Correct, exactly. So capital is what I mean by land and tools. That is capital. You're very right. Absolutely. Very good point. Capital is what you need. Capital, raw material. In fact, I didn't use the word capital because I thought it might not make sense to everybody. But capital basically means investing money into goods and into material that can be that is non-abstract. For example, land. For example, your furniture, your tools, your production equipment, your factory setup. All this is part of capital. You invest capital, you pay money. Capital basically refers to money. So you pay money to build up the whole infrastructure. That is capital. You're right, absolutely right. I use the term tools and land, but it is actually, in short, it is capital. Okay, so earlier these were the drivers of the economy, but right now the drivers, which we will talk about more in the course of this lecture. Today the drivers are what? Anybody can tell me about any one driver of digital economy today? So the current drivers are not this capital or raw material or labor. Current drivers of the economy are data and applications, internet bandwidth, devices, and most importantly, people-centric attributes like innovation, like competency, like courage. These are the drivers of the digital economy. It is no longer about capital or labor or raw material. Okay, so it is very important. We shall discuss, of course, more on this. So I'm moving on now to the first slide, unless somebody has any other point to say. So let's define the digital economy. Okay, we will. So many factors have clicked together. It is, remember, it is coming together over the ages which have led to the creation of digital economy. There is no one event that one can say this happened, so the digital economy resulted. It's not. Many events have come together. So the digital economy refers to an economy. Again, I'm putting it into a definition. Most of you can probably download this presentation, so you don't need to make notes. But before we come to the PowerPoint definition, I want to speak it out in my own words so that people can understand that the digital economy refers to an economy, or what did we say? They refers to an economy that is a pattern of production and consumption that is based on digital computing technologies. Now, it's a very obvious definition. The digital economy refers to an economy that is based on digital computing technology, where business is conducted through the internet and the World Wide Web. This is a very important point. We tend to ignore it. We tend to talk about digital, only the other drivers like businesses, data, and all that. But at the center of the digital economy is the internet. Basically, in the first phase, I remember I used to talk about digital economy in my presentations in different corporates, and we used to talk about the digital economy as being an economy where sale and business is conducted over the internet. That used to be the definition, but I'm expanding that to cover digital technology. So, but remember that the digital economy revolves around the internet and the web, and these are at its very core. Never forget that. Irrespective of what other technologies are there, applications or data or whatever else you may have, at the core of it is the World Wide Web or the internet or the web. You may also hear that there are other terms used to refer to the digital economy, which are new economy. When you hear somebody say new economy, it means nothing but the digital economy or the web economy. Okay, so the digital now. Sorry, I clicked twice. I should have clicked one. So again, so this is the definition of the digital economy. Now we will talk more about this. It may not make perfect sense right now, but as we go along, it will, I assure you. So digital economy is the economic activity resulting from the billions of online connections. What do we mean by online? Anybody? Online means connected to the internet. Simple. Okay, there is no the hidden meanings or anything here. It's a very simple presentation. It is the economic activity resulting from the billions of online connections among people businesses, data, devices, and processes on the internet. I have underlined internet. These 5 things that I'm talking about, these 5 things and 5 things alone, nothing else. These 5 things are known as the participants of the digital economy. Digital economy is 5 participants. Okay, the participants are different from drivers. Drivers are what enables it. Participants are the players. Okay, so what are the main drivers of the digital economy? We already touched upon that. If you see digital data, I'll talk about each of these in very brief so that it makes sense. What are the main drivers of the digital economy? Digital data, digital platforms, abundance of bandwidth, and smart. I'm just reading it from the slide. And smart devices are the primary growth drivers for the digital economy. Any questions or comments so far? Okay, now let's talk about very briefly. We all know that these are very familiar terms. As I said in the beginning, I'm not going to talk about any new concept. I'm just going to put things in perspective and awaken things that we already know. So, for example, if you look at digital data. Now, digital data, I remember most of you would also, in fact, all of you, none of you would have been born by in that time. But if you look at the year 1992, the data, total amount of data that was transacted over all of the global internet was about 100 GB in a day. Remember, it is in a day. I'm not talking about second or minute. 100 GB in a day. Okay, so this is very important to know. Whereas it is now in 2019 more than 100,000 GB per second. So you can imagine from 100 GB in a day to over 100,000 GB per second. So there is, in fact, it's millions of times, billions of times more in 2019, and by the end of 2022, it is projected to cross more than 150,000 gigabits per second in terms of gigabytes per second rather. By the end of 2022, so you can see the explosion in data. So this has been one of the enablers. And remember that in the digital economy, data is the new economic resource for creating and capturing value. Earlier, people used to put data on tapes and forget about it. Today, they cannot afford to do that. Data is the main enabler. How you analyze data, how you look at data, how you interpret data, how you use data to make data-driven decisions. This is what determines success in the digital economy. Ignoring data does not means failure. Okay, in fact, there's a separate science. Some of you maybe some separate branch of engineering called data science that is emerging. It basically deals with how to get maximum value out of data. The other major driver of the digital economy is platforms. Now, platform as a term may be familiar to some of you and not so familiar to everyone. So I'm just reiterating it. Now, there are 2 types of platforms which drive the digital economy. There are 2 types of platform. Basically, it is known as platformization. A platform is a mechanism to bring together a set of parties to interact on the web. So there are 2 types of platform. One is the transaction platforms, like for example, Amazon or Uber or Airbnb. I'm sure all of you have used these, which allow exchanges between parties to transact business. So these are known as transaction platforms. These are platforms that allow exchanges between, and these are a result of the digital economy. These are what are driving if these platforms were not there, you would not be able to conduct business in the digital economy. So these are transaction platforms which allow exchanges between parties. The other type of platform, which is equally important, particularly to engineers like yourselves, are the innovation platforms. These are, for example, operating systems like Android and Linux, or standards like MPEG, or tools like Sublime and GitHub, which are used for software development. These are which are used to create the environment for developing innovative applications in software. Using these, you can develop more applications which are driving the digital economy. So these are the 2 types of platforms, the innovation platforms and the transaction platforms. So if you had data but no platforms, you would not be able to conduct business. If you had a platform but no data, you would not be able to conduct business. So both are critical, digital data and digital platform. Now, once these 2 are in place, you also need abundant bandwidth in order for it to establish connectivity between people. How do you share data among the people? How do you enable exchanges or transactions unless there is bandwidth? Today, you can watch Netflix on your mobile while you are going in a bus, right? Because and Netflix is a streaming video, so it consumes a lot of bandwidth, but it is available. The 5G is coming. There will be even more abundance of bandwidth. Then you are at your homes, you have fiber, which is very high bandwidth. So abundance of bandwidth is the other main driver of the digital economy. And finally, The proliferation of smart devices, whether it's a smartphone or a iPad or a smart laptop, or basically everybody today. I touched upon this in my last lecture also. Smart devices have been the mainstay of the digital revolution. So unless everybody had smart devices, what use would be bandwidth, what use would be digital platforms, and what use would be data? So essentially, the point here is that all four of these primary drivers, there could be other drivers. I'm not saying that there's nothing else to it, but without any of these four drivers being in place at together, and the strange thing, the miraculous thing, I would say, that happened is that all these four evolved independently of each other, but together. They surface together, creating the absolutely right conditions for the digital economy to evolve and to grow and to thrive. Okay, so we discussed about the proliferation of smart devices, and we will not go into details of all the devices, but you all understand what we mean when we say the smart device. So all these four coming together have driven the digital economy. So the digital economy, just before we leave this slide, I want to sort of emphasize one more thing, which will be familiar, that the digital economy is not just a way to change business transactions from face to online. In fact, I'm saying this because when I talk to people generally about what they understand by the digital economy, is that they feel that, okay, earlier I used to go to the bank, now I can do banking from home. So that is digital economy. Yes, of course, that is one of the aspects of the digital economy, but that's not all. It is an ecosystem that has given rise to very new ways of transacting business. For example, most of you would be familiar with the term aggregators. Like the way of doing business through aggregator. For example, what is Uber? Uber depends on aggregators. Basically, the drivers, it aggregates a lot of people on the demand side and a lot of people on the supply side. It creates an interface in between and enables them to conduct business with each other. Uber doesn't own cabs or cars or anything. Similarly, Amazon does not own merchandise. They just do aggregation. So aggregation was a model that did not exist before the digital economy. It is only a product or an outcome of the digital economy. Similarly, if you take a new method of payment like mobile wallet, this is also an outcome of the digital economy. So it's not just changing from face to online. It is also the customer experience, the personalization that has been brought in, or anywhere, anytime you can avail a service, whether on the move or at your home, you can get a service. So these are new ways of enabling business. So it is not just a analog to digital or offline to online, but the spawning of a completely new ways of doing business. So I hope we are clear. Can we move to the next slide? Any questions so far? I hope I've been able to make myself clear. Okay, now this is a slide which would be probably better. We would be doing more justice to this slide if we could do it in an interactive way. What are some of the key outcomes of the digital economy? How has digital economy impacted us? So let us look at it. Some of the positive outcomes, it has leveled the playing field. It means today, whether you are a startup or you are a big gun, doesn't matter. Okay, you are basically presenting an interface to the world to aggregate suppliers and providers, and basically suppliers and customers, and that is so basically it is no longer, it's a level playing field. There is no longer a difference between big companies, small company, large company. In fact, some of the startups are doing far better than some of the more established companies. So it levels the playing field. It basically, then second is globalization. There are no geographical barriers. It doesn't matter where you are. I don't care where my provider or the person I'm doing business with is, so long as my needs are met. Lowering of entry barriers. As I said in the last slide, all you need is a laptop and internet connection, and you can become a startup by today evening, and an idea, of course. Acceleration in the pace of business. You can do real-time transactions, real-time money transfers, so businesses become much faster. Proliferation of data, not only in terms of volume, but also in terms of the velocity, means the speed of at which data is transferred, and the variety, structured data. You have video data, you have audio data, you have text data, you have non-text data, you have paper data. So there's a huge variety of data types. Innovative business models like aggregation I talked about is one. Then platforms, aggregators, these are the new. And these are some of the common outcomes. And I mean, there's nothing new that I'm telling you here, just reiterating the common ones that came to my mind as I was preparing this slide. anytime, anywhere access to information, data as a business asset. This is a very important thing. This is often ignored. Even established businesses ignore it today, especially large companies which have traditionally not been used to it are failing only because of this fact that they have not used their data as a critical business asset, which it is. We are more heading towards a cashless economy. Cash has become less important. Data-driven insights and decision-making benefits for developing world. A lot of companies forget the developing world. Look at today the rural or slightly lesser developed parts of India itself. Earlier, only Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta, Bangalore, Chennai. Only these were the places where people used to see the benefits of the economic growth. Now, anywhere, even people sitting in villages or small towns can access any service on the internet. So there are benefits to people who are otherwise underdeveloped, but the digital economy has accelerated their development. But there are also some negative fallouts. There could be more, which also we are aware of, sadly. Like the business is more prone to cyber attacks. There are new avenues for fraud and crime, like phishing or credit card fraud. There are concerns on privacy, leakage of your personal data, disruption to traditional economy and job. That fear remains. It's more of a fear than a reality, but it's still there. Then less community. You're more faceless. I've never seen anybody from Amazon. Whereas if I go to my local Kirana shop to buy bread or milk in the morning, I at least see the guy. He says hello to me. I say hello to him. So there's less. It's more faceless. Addictive nature. A lot of people, we know about it, that people cannot do without technology. If you switch off Wi-Fi in the home, chaos happens. I mean, people just don't know what to do. Wi-Fi has gone now. It's clear addiction. Monopoly of tech giants like what Google and Amazon and Apple today are ruling our lives in more ways than we would like. So there are some positive and some negative, but I think the benefits far outweigh the disadvantages. Okay. Now there's something very interesting I want to particularly. Any questions? Any other thoughts anybody has? I mean, as I said, this is not an exhaustive list of the benefits and negatives of the digital economy. This is just some of the more obvious ones that I could come up with. But please, there could be many more. In fact, you could take it as an exercise and write some more positive and negatives of the digital economy that come to your mind. Let's talk about the digital economy. This is an important concept, and I will explain to you why it is. It will be clear to you by the time we move from this slide why this concept of digital divide is important. We all know what is meant by digital divide. We also talked about it in my last class. I'll reiterate it, of course. So in understanding the digital economy, this is a very important concept. It's a huge barrier. It is the biggest barrier to the growth and sustenance of digital business. You cannot become a digital business if there's a digital divide. That means, so just to explain what is the digital divide, when digital technology first made an appearance, it was only in isolated pockets. It started with being only in the major metropolitan areas, but now, of course, we expect it to be everywhere. Earlier, it was only available in isolated pockets, and that is what created the digital divide, by which we mean an inequality regarding access to the internet or use of the internet or impact of information and communication technology in general. So if you are unable to use the internet because you don't have bandwidth or you don't have data connection in your locality, you are on the other side of the digital divide. If you don't have a laptop, for example, in my own house, we had a maid who had a daughter. Now she had to attend classes and her school made it compulsory that everybody should have a laptop. Now she did not have a laptop being a poor person. So she was unable to attend classes for a long time. Then we all pulled in and got her a laptop. But so she was forced to be on the other side of the digital divide. So digital divide can be created. These are some obvious things that we see in front of us, but there are many regions of the world, like for example, in sub-Saharan Africa and some other places where there is no internet. But the problem is that companies want to do business everywhere. So basically, it is very important that companies or institutions which are digitally driven make an effort to bridge the digital divide. You cannot just sit hand on hand and say, well, what to do? There's a digital divide, so I can't do business. No. The onus is on the enterprises themselves, on the digital enterprises to shorten or bridge the digital divide. I'll give you a nice story as an example, probably just to break the monotony for some of you who may be feeling bored by this. I hope I remember the whole story right, but this would be a relevant story, though it has nothing at all to do with the internet, nothing at all to do with technology. It's just a story. Some of you may have heard it. See, so there was a reputed shoe manufacturing company in Europe. Okay, so this company had a huge market in Europe. It had almost had a monopoly. It had everywhere in Europe their shoes were sold. So it was already quite well entrenched. So, but then it decided, hey, we are already captured the European market. Now, how about expanding? So they formed two teams with a mandate to visit an African tribal area. Okay, that let's go there and see what scope exists to expand our market. So they formed two teams to visit an African tribal area and report on the viability of expanding the business there. So these two teams were headed by two different people, and they headed out to this remote region to conduct ground surveys and research onto the potential, how much market exists in those tribal areas of Africa, very deep within the forest and those areas. So after doing their surveys, these two teams returned to the headquarters, and they were both asked to present their findings. So the leader of the first team came forward, and he reported there is no market in that area. No one wears shoes. Okay, I'll repeat that. So he came forward and he said there is no market in that area because no one wears shoes. Okay, management said fine, that's fine, but let's hear the other team. The other team came forward and the leader said there is a huge market in that area. No one wears shoes. So the cause was the same. No one wears shoes. One saw it as there is no market there. One saw it as there's a huge market there. Now, both are right in their own ways, but one of them prevailed, and you can guess which one. The other one. Same thing exists with the digital divide. You can either say, hey, there is no internet there, so no possibility of business, or you can say, okay, let us see what we can do. Since there is no internet, let's see how we can become the pioneers over there. So this is the example not really connected to the digital divide, but it explains the concept very clearly, which is something that many of you, whichever field you go to work into, you will encounter this problem of digital divide. These are the kind of situations which almost every new enterprise which enters uncharted markets frequently come across, and it is their attitude that determines the winners. In this case, you may take a back seat and wait for internet availability, or create your own market by contributing to the ongoing efforts. Okay, it's your choice. So this example, I hope you will remember always when you think of the digital divide. Any questions or thoughts or suggestions? Okay, now we come to a very important slide. If you remember, this is a slide which would require you to use your intellectual power and your brain and your thinking capability and your inventive capability. We will see how. It's an important slide. Basically this slide you will not find on the internet. I had written 2 books on the digital transformation. So this slide is taken from one of my books. So this is, though it may seem very common, but it is not. I'll explain to you. So as we said earlier also, digital economy has 5 participants. What are these 5 participants? People, I'm just reading it out from the slide. People, businesses, data, devices, and processes. Okay. Now continuous innovation in each of these participating factors or participants keeping the web at the center has led to the creation and growth of what we call the digital economy. As an example, people, how do people to the people to people contact over the internet gave us the social media, or email also before that, but right now the more prevalent thing is social media. Similarly, conducting business with other companies over the internet gave us what is known as B2B or business to business transactions, which are a very key component of the digital economy. Similarly, data connected with data over the internet gave rise to virtual data warehouses, or eventually it led to the creation of big data. So similarly, for all the five participants of the digital economy, but that's not what my point here is. My point is, it is when each of these 5 participants intersect with one another, not within, but outside. Not people within people giving rise to social media and many other things. That is fine. But look at the possibilities that open up when each of these participants interacts with others. For example, when people interact with business on the internet, never forget this term. That's why I emphasized it in the beginning also. Internet is at the center. When people interact with businesses over the internet, what do you get? You get e-commerce. So this is a result of convergence or intersection or whatever you call it. People intersecting with businesses. People intersect with business over the internet, you get e-commerce. Similarly, when business intersects with data, say for reporting and analysis, we get data warehousing. Okay, within the data thing. And ultimately, with the current explosion of data volumes, velocity, and variety, when businesses interact with data, we get big data analytics. Big data analytics is what is enabling big businesses today. Okay, so similarly, when data or big data, let us say, interacts with devices, primarily mobile devices, you get Internet of Things. Okay, so or devices sharing huge data between themselves over high-speed internet. A connected car, for example, this is just an example I'm giving. A connected car, for example, sends or receives at least 25 gigabits of data per hour to the cloud. And you know what's a connected car going driverless on the road is sharing 25 GB of data every hour with the cloud. Now imagine if there's a disruption in that, the cloud or the internet disruption, the car will meet with an accident because it's completely controlled by data, by external logic. So which is on the cloud. So it is exchanging data with the cloud at the rate of 25 GB, and it will go up as we get more and more sophistication. The bandwidth requirement will also go up. So basically, a disruption in the chain could be catastrophic. Now, when mobile devices or devices, as we see on the left side at the bottom, when devices intersect with applications, what do we get? We get mobility. Mobility is what enables us to run applications like shopping, banking, leisure, and a host of others while on the move. It basically gives us freedom. So this is what the intersection between devices and processes does. When data and applications or the processes connect with people via the internet, the concept of cloud is created. Today you connect with data and applications always through the cloud. So essentially, my point that I'm trying to convey is that it gives a lot of the intersection opens up the new possibilities for innovation. As you go deeper and deeper and deeper, there are more and more possibilities for creating more value-added services and richer services and more innovative services. So further interest, and by the way, I have shown them in a certain order, but it is not necessary to keep that order. For example, if you have processes intersecting with data, though they are not shown adjacent to each other, but processes can intersect with data. What do you get if processes intersect with data? You get artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is nothing but intelligent logic or algorithms, called AI algorithms, which are working on huge, humongous amounts of data, which is big data. Okay, so essentially, any of these participants can intersect with other participants to create new services, which then begin to become an integral part of the digital economy. So this is essentially what I wanted to say. I would request you to think on this, how you can create more and more services, more and more products, more and more experiences, okay, by creating intersections within these and within their components also. So the possibilities are limited, and it changes everything basically. That's why I've written here. It's not just a way of doing business. For example, 3D printing or brain-computer interface, predictive analytics, blockchain, or object recognition technologies are just some examples of what successive intersections can achieve. You will find it, you'll discover it yourself. So the digital economy is a term where we talked about, that is how it basically driven by innovation, and therefore the size does not matter. Who is big and who is small, who is a startup, who is an old, all that doesn't matter. It's more than just a way of doing business. It is something that has pervaded every aspect of our life today, as we shall see. So the digital economy, now on the next slide, now the digital economy is not just about trade and commerce, it's a way of life. Let me give you tell you something very interesting here. See, businesses traditionally define themselves by their core competence. This is important. I request you to kindly listen to this. Businesses traditionally define themselves by their core competence, with technology being at best an enabler. For example, you might say that I'm running a bookshop where I use a computer to do my invoicing. So technology is basically an enabler. Okay, so the technology, for example, a progressive retail business, okay, a large retail shop, for example, a progressive retail business may view itself as a merchandising company that uses technology, right? Let's shift our perspectives for a moment. Can this business be viewed as a technology company that does merchandising? Just imagine the shift. Okay, you are a merchandising company that uses technology, or are you a technology company that uses merchandising? Amazon is a technology company that uses merchandising. Your local Kirana shop is a merchandising company that uses technology. You see the difference here. In fact, much before the whole this digital economy came about, somebody at FedEx made a very good comment, which exactly exemplifies my point. That they said about FedEx that we used to be a trucking company that uses technology. Now we are a technology company that uses trucks. So you see the difference. Okay, and see how it completely alters the perspective and the way you view business. This is the digital economy. When you think in those terms, when you think like that, when you think that technology is driving my business and what you are doing is incidental, then you are a part of a new emerging world order, which is the digital economy. I hope if there is time, I have a very good story I remembered about FedEx, how they adapted when, okay, I'll just maybe shorten it and tell you. FedEx was a document delivery service. If you have a document like an important letter, you could send it to your branch office using FedEx. When email arrived or when PDF scanners and print arrived, I mean, FedEx could have thought, guys, now we are gone. Nothing we can do. Because now who will send letters? People will just send themselves email or exchange documents as PDF, as scanned PDF. But they were not scared. What they did, they thought through, how is this going to pan out? And then they became logistics and the backbone of e-commerce. That's how they transitioned themselves from being document delivery companies. They became e-commerce logistics companies, which is a parallel line, but required innovative thought to transition themselves while retaining their core competence. Okay, and that is how that is the kind of dilemma and questions that many companies today, when they are transforming themselves digitally, which when we come to talk about digital transformation, we will talk about. But this was one example of digital transformation that was brought about. I mean, if you look at photography, and unfortunately we don't have time to go through this and all that thing, but if you look at photography, in my time when I was a boy, at that time, not everyone had a camera. Very few people that I knew had cameras, and even those that had cameras were not carrying it with them all the time. Okay, so taking a photograph was a very difficult job. You had to buy a reel, then you had to load the camera, and then you had to specifically, okay, I'm going for a wedding or I'm going for a picnic, so okay, I'll take my camera with me. So it was a planned activity. And then you took a photo and then you waited for the reel to get over and then you got it processed and then you sort of sent it by snail mail or the regular mail to people. So it used to sometimes take months. Imagine today with the digital economy. You just take out your camera whenever you see something on the road, you click it, get a high resolution photo, and within seconds, anybody in the world can have it. So imagine how digital economy has transformed this whole concept of photography. From few people having cameras which were used very sparingly to everyone having a camera which is used very often and can be shared so easily among so many constituents. So this demonstrates the impact of the digital economy in one of the key phases. Now I come to the last slide, unless anybody has a question. I will unfortunately not be dwelling too much on this because this is a topic more for our later classes. But I would like to say one thing, that the ultimate goal of the digital economy, is the creation of the digital enterprise. Okay, the creation of the digital enterprise, I'm again repeating myself, is the ultimate aim of a digital transformation and the key enabler of the digital economy. If there were no digital enterprises, there would be no digital economy, or vice versa also. A digital enterprise is an entity, again, drawing from what we discussed earlier, a digital enterprise also has the internet at its center. As we saw in one of the slides when we were talking about the participants, it has the internet at its core and relies on digital tools and technologies to deliver on its strategy. Now, what is important is that digital enterprise, let me just make one more statement so that later on we all have clarity about this. A digital enterprise may be born digital, such as Uber, Amazon, Airbnb, Netflix. These are all born digital. They did not exist before the digital economy. And countless, or it can be turned digital. For example, banks, they were not always digital, but they achieved the digital transformation to become digital companies. Or the railway, for example, IRCTC ticketing systems, or airlines and other legacy businesses. The companies which are born digital are called digital natives, and the companies that turn digital are called digital migrants. But both are different two types of digital enterprises. So while each digital enterprise is unique from an internal perspective, you may have your own culture, your own business model, your own people, your own thoughts, your own innovation, everything. However, from an external perspective, they rely on the same four pillars for creating value or creating business value. These four pillars, first of all, it stands on the most important pillar of ICT or enabling technology, information and communication technology. Then it requires a partner ecosystem. For example, technology partners, software developers, even your mobile service providers, banks, payment gateways, logistics companies, content providers, all these are part of the digital enterprise, though they are an extension of it. Then you need markets, for example, a business to business base of companies or business to consumer. These are the two common types of businesses. You also have B2B2C, but that means a business sells to another business and that business sells to a customer. You also have C2C or consumer to consumer. For example, some of you may have used OLX for selling of material that you don't need to other people, or the rental portal, house renting portals. So it is consumer to consumer. I am a consumer, you are a consumer, I can sell to you using this model. So there are markets and consumers. And finally, which is very important, is the external environment. This existed even before the digital economy, but you need but there is competition which influences the digital enterprise. Industry association, most importantly the government and the regulators. The regulation plays a very important part in the digital economy, or in any economy for that matter. So the government and the competition, the over-the-top players, all this basically influences the working of the digital enterprise. So irrespective of whether you are a large enterprise like the Indian Railway or a small enterprise, these are the four pillars that you always have to contend with, always. In fact, I will end I think according to me, there is 1 more minute left. So I will just, how even a small business requires these four pillars to basically exist. So I live in an apartment in a condominium, which is about 30 kilometers from Delhi. It's slightly outside of Gurgaon also, though it is technically in Gurgaon. The commercial infrastructure is under development here, even as families continue to move in, because this is a new area. And there's a large number of apartments in this locality. So a person who earlier used to work as a driver with me decided to cash in on this emerging opportunity and rented a shop here just outside our gate. The shop is still there, and rented a shop here to sell vegetables and fruit to the new residents in the area. Yeah, this is a new market, new people have come up, and this is an emerging market for him. Okay, so he gets vegetable from the wholesale market early in the morning and starts his shop around 7:30 in the morning every day. He accepts phone orders for home delivery as well and takes payments by cash and mobile wallet. Now, though it is still early days for him, business is very good because he's one of the few vegetable suppliers here. A few days ago, when I was going for a walk, he met me to get my views on an idea that had struck him. He said that he wanted to offer people the convenience of ordering vegetables through a mobile application. I mean, imagine, he was a driver, not a very highly educated person, but he also grasped this concept that I could begin a digital enterprise, I could become a digital enterprise. Now, vegetables being a perishable item, any unsold inventory at the day's end is a write-off. I mean, nobody would buy stale vegetables next year, so we had to throw it. So he wanted channels to basically accelerate his business transactions. So his plan was to increase his offtake by offering more channels. So he took my view that can I create a mobile app for doing this? So I advised him instead to become a supplier in the value chain of other online suppliers like Big Basket and others, with exclusive rights for that area. Now, depending on the success rate, I told him he could then set up his own startup business for selling vegetables through the app. But basically, his idea certainly has merit, and it speaks of how businesses of all use, of all size, it doesn't matter how big you are or how small you are, can potentially benefit from digital transformation. The point is that digital wave is spreading to every walk of our lives and all sections of our society. And if you look at this vegetable guy, he's also relying on the four things, and he needs technology, he needs partners, he needs customers, and he needs the Vegetable Wholesale Market Association and other people as part of his external environment, by which he is influenced. Okay, so all these four pillars are mandatory, whether you are a big business or a small business, and this one should keep in mind when just talking about the digital enterprise or the digital economy or digital transformation. So these may sound very simple, but these are important concepts. So it's not just about large technology-driven enterprises, but for every enterprise. I think we have just run out of time. It is so I will end here. This was my last slide. I have some questions, which, as Dr. Mittal informed, there is a grading tool available through which I can share these questions with you, and I would be happy if you can share your thoughts with me on these questions. Okay, so I'm closing now. I hope it was not too fast-paced for you, and it made sense. So thank you very much for attending the lecture today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Ashish.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Any question, please send it to Ashish. He also
Yeah,
has
more than welcome.
an email address. He will have IIT Goa email address. I think it's still in process. And I have created, we'll be using one tool for, giving assignments and grading them. It's called, it's called Gradescope. It's developed by University of California, Berkeley. It's a nice tool. So please create your account in that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.